What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video I want to talk about if we're getting The Last of Us Part 2's release date tonight at the Game Awards. So, I've done a couple videos on this, and I was trying to pick a couple different topics in terms of to talk about if we'll see it at the Game Awards. I talked about if we'll see a Dragon Age 4, something I very much believe we'll get to hear about tonight. I talked about if we're getting the Avengers 4 trailer tonight, and you know, I'm recording this a little bit early. At this point, it could be very, very rumored online and this is basically almost confirmed, as confirmed as it can get, that we're getting these things. But in this video, like I said, I want to talk about Last of Us Part 2, because here's the thing. A couple of weeks ago, the heavy rumor was that PlayStation was going to announce the release dates of Dreams, of Ghost of Tsushima, and of Death Stranding at the Game Awards. Now, two of those, I think, make a lot of sense. Dreams, for the love of God, needs a release date, okay? I don't know how it doesn't already have a release date. I don't know how any of this is possible. I don't know why it's taken them so long. I'm honestly fed up with the game, and at the same time, very intrigued with the game, and I want the freaking game to come out. So give us a release date. I think that's very, very plausible that happens. Death Stranding, I think, is very, very possible. While, you know, it seemed like years ago Death Stranding was going to be a game that would take like 8 years to develop and it wouldn't be ready until like 2023, it really seems to have made really, really good progress. It seems like Hideo Kojima is making a ton of progress. We've seen a lot of the game over the last couple years, really. Every single conference, any single thing that's got Sony at it, they always show Death Stranding. Like, there's always something more to show. And they're really relying on it, I think, to be a huge, huge thing. And I think it will. I think it absolutely will. But, you know, they've really shown that a lot. And I think what they've done with that is prove that that game is further along than a lot of people thought. So, and also you can't forget that Hideo Kojima and Jeff Keighley have some sort of like thing, and mainly Jeff Keighley to Hideo Kojima. He loves him like his father, and like a role model. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they held hands on stage and announced the Death Stranding release date. That's just the kind of thing I would expect from them. Here's the thing, like that, so that's very, very possible. Okay, that's very possible. We get that just because the relationship those two have, they're very trusting of each other. They have a close relationship. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that. Ghost of Tsushima, I'm not honestly sure. I don't really see why we would get that so quickly. They looked like the game back at E3 was not very well, you know, completed. The game looked interesting, but I thought there were a lot of problems even just with the gameplay we saw. And so to get the release date of the entire game, I feel like it's a little too soon for that, but we'll have to see. Last of Us Part 2 was not mentioned in that rumor of games that we'd get a release date, and that honestly makes no sense. If we were to get a Ghost of Tsushima release date and not a Last of Us release date, that makes no sense to me. I really don't understand why that would happen. I really think we're getting a Last of Us Part 2, because here's the thing. I think The Last of Us Part 2 is coming out in June. I've always said that. I've always thought that, and so I'm going to continue to stick with it. Now, the layout of the spring for Sony would get a little messy depending on what happens with the other games. Dreams is not a game I think they really even care about so much that they wouldn't put other games close to it. I honestly don't think they care about that. So that I just think gets completely wiped out. We have Days Gone at the end of April, and I would assume April 26th, and I would assume that game stays by itself. I don't think they would want to put any other game close to it. So when you're announcing, say, a Death Stranding release date, it either needs to come out in March or it needs to come out in May. And it needs to come out like in the middle of May so you can give Days Gone a break. And is Death Stranding ready to come out that soon? Maybe it comes out in the fall. Maybe they have a release date for the fall. But that seems a bit far out. That's almost a year away to have a firm official release date. Normally that does not happen. And again, if you do Ghost of Tsushima, it's like, well, The Last of Us Part 2 seems to be way, way closer to being done than Ghost of Tsushima, right? And I would expect The Last of Us way sooner than Ghost of Tsushima. So if you're looking at it, I would think The Last of Us comes out first. So maybe you say Ghost of Tsushima is coming out in 2019, and then you say The Last of Us Part 2 is coming out whenever. I truly, truly believe The Last of Us is coming out in June. I truly believe it's coming out before E3, maybe right at E3. And that kind of makes sense, too, just because Sony's not going to be at E3. So while, you know, Microsoft and all them get the center stage at E3, Sony can kind of kick back, say, you know what, you know, we announced this a long time ago, we're not going to E3. I made a video talking about why I believe that, but this can add extra layer to that, because they can say, well, one, we're winning. We're absolutely dominating the console generation. We don't need to worry about what Microsoft's doing. We're just going to keep our heads, you know, right where they're at. We're going to make the new console. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have you guys wait for it, and then when it comes out, you know, it's going to blow your mind. They could do that, and then they can also say, oh, and by the way, we've already had a phenomenal year. Death Stranding has already come out. Days Gone came out and is our new game, and it did really, really well, and this is all hopeful. And The Last of Us is out right now, and it's like the game of the year, game of the generation. That would give Sony a lot. It's like, we don't even need to show up to E3. You want to know why? We just released a game, again, that's like the best game ever. Just like The Last of Us, just like God of War, just like Spider-Man. We just keep releasing these top-level games so no one can seem to match. That would give them a lot, and if you did that right at E3, it's like, well, why do you need to show up at E3? You really don't. So I really think that's a smart move, and I think that is the plan. I think The Last of Us Part 2 needs to come out in June. I think I've thought that literally for years, and I think that's gonna happen. So tonight we'll see. We'll see if it gets a release date. Even if it doesn't show up, if it doesn't get a release date, I'm gonna stick with it. I think it could still get announced within the next couple months and still come out in June. I think that's very, very possible. I don't see this game being a fall game, but we'll have to actually see. So let me know in the comments below, guys. When do you think The Last of Us Part 2 is releasing? Do you think they're going to say it tonight? Let me know. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I will see you on the next one.